All right, good morning everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mentors on Mentors. So, kamusta ka po kayong lahat? And this morning, we have a good topic na pag-uusapan. And we have two mentors that will share their ideas and mga bagay na pwede makatulong sa atin during this GCQ. So, kamusta po kayong lahat? We are back to the new normal. Ayan, so you can comment kung saan niyo po pinapanood yung ating Facebook Live. And comment replay if you're watching this on a replay. Comment live if you're watching this live. And saka kung saan niyo po pinapanood yung ating Facebook Live para mag-greet po namin kayo. Alright? So, ayan, let me introduce to you our speakers for this morning. Tawagin muna natin yung ating first speaker. He is one of the country's top-ranked public speaker and trainer for leadership programs and other soft skills. He is a seasoned management and marketing professional, being involved in various industries, advertising, fragrances, goods, printing, publishing, telecommunications, BPO, and business solutions, both from multinationals to locally owned enterprises for more than 2 decades now. So please welcome our first mentor for this morning, Mr. Boris Joaquin.
Hey, what's up? Lexus, good to see you again. Parang it's been a while. Parang meron tayong gap na 1 week. Parang napagod. Parang we got tired with all the live videos. And I can see na bago mga backgrounds natin. So, umiikot tayo around our houses. Are you in your living room right now?
Yeah, we need to find a good internet
Yeah,
connection.
hello. Hello to Anudao. Hello to Angelica. Angelica from Olongapo is watching right now. Thank you for watching.
So please share this live video for those people that are watching. And tawagin na natin yung ating second speaker for this morning, our second mentor. And he specializes in company culture design. He focuses on building shared cultures by using unorthodox tools and methods for organizations to reach and sustain their peak potential. Currently, he's a certified Lego Serious Play facilitator, a PhD in organization development, and does lectures and workshops to university students and companies internationally. So, help me welcome our second speaker, our mentor, Mr. Dae Lee.
Hi guys, hi Lexus, hi Boris. Good to see you guys again, as usual.
Hi, Dae. Welcome back.
Parang iba yung background mo ngayon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, back in my office. Actually, this is my the office war room. That's why you can see some information written down because we were brainstorming about something. Yeah, this morning. So
I think those are business strategies, so you can actually read there. How much their profit for this quarter? No, just kidding. I'm not sure about that.
is it? No, it's not. I'd be interested to know that.
All right, so
yeah.
Sir Boris?
Well, it's good to have you back, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
This concept revolved around mainly us conversing, so it's really good. It's good to have you back.
Okay, thank you. Okay, cool.
All right, so let's get started. Today's topic, this morning's topic is about getting back to business, practices to create a culture where people feel safe. So let's get started, Sir Boris and Sir Dae.
All right, I love this topic. It's something that I heard from my mentor. It's something that we spoke on online. It's getting back to business. And he was mainly asking. I was asking for advice basically because June we were supposed to pivot in a lot of ways. And when he said getting back to business, I felt like that's a good title for an online conversation. And we wrote an article that we posted on our email blast. And I was conversing with Dae. And it's good that you're free and we managed to adjust. This is a new time. This is not normally when we would air it. We would normally air it in the afternoon. But let's see how this works out. Just an hour before lunchtime. How are you, Dae? How are you? I know we talked before going on air, but yeah, nonetheless.
Well, yeah, I'm doing okay. I guess going back to work. Actually, I've been back in work since I think 2 3 weeks ago. So really trying to help people understand things, and a lot of I guess clients are also asking how to actually get back. Right. So that's what I've been doing. How about you?
Yeah, as you know, we've been trying to pivot online, so we're trying to convert everything
Mm-hmm.
digitally. I think a lot of our conversations towards the last 2 weeks of May is how do we restructure things,
Mm-hmm.
and in a way, like rethinking whose roles are redundant and whose roles are important at this point, what's lacking, and what do we do? Do we go back to work physically, or do we just pivot everything to remote working? I think we made some concrete decisions on that. June
Mm-hmm.
1 was really a turning point. It was a defining moment where we recalibrated a lot of things. It was uneasy, to be honest. It felt weird in a way because it didn't feel the same. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if that I didn't commute. I didn't go through the trouble of traveling from one point to another. But everything from transacting with accounting, having several phone calls, an hour after the other, that was pretty. It was expected, but it's not something. I felt weird. I think the awkwardness was obvious, and it's just admitting that it was there. How about
Mm-hmm.
you?
Well, I guess there's more work to be done, I think. And I don't think it's just psychological when you say that there's so much work. Maybe it's also because a lot of people, there's no such thing as, well, there is still, but there's no such thing as commuting time, right? So if you are
Mm.
able to do maybe 3 meetings in a day, maximum, before, these days it's like, I don't know, 7 8 meetings. Like, for example, if this was live in a physical space, the whole day would be dedicated to this. But for example, today I have 2 webinars, 2 separate client talks that are just back to back the whole day, and then I have to tend to my own business at the same time, other physical clients that I have. So the rest is actually not there anymore. So
Yeah,
I guess that's in a way we're similar that way.
it's extra. I don't know if you could say. I think we had this conversation at some point, or maybe I spoke about this to another person. It's actually quite draining, right? To be on video, to be having to be doing remote calls.
Mm-hmm.
At some point towards the day, I find myself like crawling to the couch or to the bed. I felt it's I don't know. Is that emotional? Is that mental? Is that psychological? Where it's
I I think it's both. It's obviously physiological and psychological at the same time, no? And I completely understand because, for example, right now I'm digital. Now, in a few moments later, when I go out of my office, I have to wear this to talk to my staff, if ever, to do stuff. So now I'm sure other business owners would also, or people who are working on site would experience this. They have to be in a meeting virtually, then all of a sudden they have to switch, put on their masks, and go meet someone physically. So I think the context changing would be very very tricky these days.
I know.
Yeah.
I had the same experience yesterday. I was walking somewhere because I need to buy something, and then one of my business partners called, and we were talking on the phone, and I had my mask on, and he was complaining about not hearing me well. I said, "Hey, dude, my mask is on." So I was like, I won't remove it even if I'm talking to you right now because I'm outside. So it's either you wait, and I know it's urgent, but bear with the muscle, but that's how it's going to sound right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of anxiety, I suppose. Even
Yeah.
digitally, when you converse on video, there's you feel anxious not knowing how the other person is responding or reacting. If there's
Yeah. Yeah.
delay time,
True.
I don't
True.
know if it's a personality thing, but I tend to stress out on little things like that. Like, oh, I can't hear him anymore. He's lagging. And it's
Yeah.
frustrating because it feels like it's wasting time. or it's frustrating for you because if you lag, you have to repeat everything that you said.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now,
True, true.
now that's our world. That's
Mm,
what we're doing. But what about other businesses? So what are your thoughts? I think if there's a few people who's watching us right now who
mm,
owns their business, who runs their business, who may be employed in a business, and they're wondering how do I get back to my how do I go to
yeah.
my unusual business right now because it's not business as usual. What are your thoughts there?
Well, regardless of where you are, I think some things are very, very common. So, for example, we said that we feel overworked, sometimes very, very stressed, right? And we have this saying that we seem to be doing more and more every day, but achieving less and less. I guess it's also because of the uncertainty that we have, and because of the fact that if you really look at the core of it, there are two ways that people react to change, which is
Mm-hmm.
one is they pretty much make a distraction so that they wouldn't face the change, and the second one, if you look at it, is just really directly facing the change, right? So it really
Mm-hmm.
depends. That's why we say sometimes that you're doing so much, you're so busy, you're doing all these things, but you don't achieve anything. That's because maybe most of the things that you do is a distraction, or there are things that you do that you've learned from someone that's not fit for you, right? For example,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a small business owner or if you're an employee, things that work for a big business wouldn't work for you. So I guess it's more of sitting down and really reflecting than absorbing information these days. So I think that's what is not being done. Everything's so external, but never done internally. Things are never done internally. So I think that's one of the things that people should start with. So it's a starting point that people should start with.
So if they would start with that, what would be your prescription or advice?
Oh, my not really prescription, but my advice actually, from my point of view, or from a behavior standpoint, is really understanding. Okay, what are the things that would actually make the most impact right now in whatever you're doing? And how
Mm.
feasible is it? Because um, sometimes you say that you want to do things that have high impact, but you don't have the resources for it, right? So that's also another issue that people have. So it's looking maybe at your resources at the same time. What can you actually do now with the resources that you have? A lot of people go into the rabbit hole or into the downward spiral of complaining that they don't have this, they don't have that. But that's true for everyone. That's true for everyone, right? So it's really starting with, okay, what are the resources that you have currently, and what are the things that you can do to create that sort of impact? And I think you would know this way, way better because you have Project Purpose on, right? You have Project Purpose. What I mean here is that if you know your values, your purpose, or what you stand for, I think it's easier to align and say, okay, are these things that people are saying going to work for me or my company or my organization? Or I should take a completely different step, right? So, for example, retrenchment, I'm sure you're hearing this a lot. People are saying that, okay, retrenchment is a thing that they kind of want to talk about, but really it goes back to, okay, does it really help you? Does it make an impact? Is it positive or negative? Because some companies it might be positive, some companies it actually might be negative, right? So, yeah.
I'm just wondering. So, how could it be positive? I have an idea, but why don't you share it? How can retrenchment be positive?
No, for example, if what says if the values of the company was it to develop the person, and then the company was able to create maybe next steps
Okay.
for these things and made programs for them. I think just to keep it short, Airbnb has a very good. Airbnb released a statement after they laid off people, and they put step by step steps basically, so that what are the people who got laid off will do, right? Things like that. And it's actually bad maybe for some companies because it's a disservice to their employees if they actually keep, right? Sometimes that may
Mm.
be the case, right? To be very, very honest. Right? But of course, equip them. Like, again, this is your realm, equipping people, right? So yeah, how about you? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I agree with what you said a while ago about we recalibrate according to our vision and purpose. I guess from the last time that we had something like this, when you were sharing some of the tools that you were using,
Hmm.
what I got from that and I put it together and essentially it became the narrative to some of my talks,
Oh
some of my
wow.
virtual talks, is purpose leads to proactivity and eventually prioritizing a lot of things. So when you zero into your purpose, when you're purpose driven, and sometimes retrenching human resources or restructuring
Hmm.
your company is goes back to you really identifying and redefining and going back to the original purpose why you started the business. And by
Hmm.
doing so, you're not just productive. You choose to be more proactive. And we know that proactivity is more of the intentionality, the resilience, the moving forward, the pivoting and persevering depending on what's happening. And then you shared a tool about impact versus visibility, and I guess that's where prioritizing comes in.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
actually get to prioritize, but the
Hmm.
root of that of those tasks, of those strategic tasks, is your purpose. If that's grounded, if you're able to rekindle, remember, redefine it, and recently when I've been doing this strategic meetings with some of my clients and even some groups and NGOs, and I'm doing one with a tourism board tomorrow. It's really just going and it's answering. It can answer the question, what are you in business for? Then we have a problem because we can't
Hmm.
even
Hmm.
if we can't even define that because it's more than just financial purposes, right? And that's
Yeah.
normally is the result that you get from that. So yeah, I just want to share that to you because I thought and that's been my narrative for the past month, and that also has guided me when we were reevaluating what our company purpose is for. We've been
Yeah.
doing a lot of things. We've been doing conferences, we've been doing coaching, consultancies, and trainings, now virtual trainings. But we really have to sift through all of that and decide which ones actually achieve our purpose, and
Hmm.
maybe we
Hmm.
should zero in and doing that more. So mentoring has been identified as one, and it's amazing. Yeah, that's why I want to talk to you further on that. So yeah,
Yeah.
um, what other advice can you? I mean, you're not just running a consulting company, right?
Yeah.
You're also in retail, more or less.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Retail. Yeah.
And accurate to say that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What other? I mean, if there is a small scale business going back, let's say somebody who's an owner of a someone who's selling something or a restaurant or so,
Hmm.
what are the things that you would want to tell them? I mean, what would be helpful tips that you would want to give them?
Okay. Of course, this is based on my experiences running. I think a small, medium, and large businesses at the same time. Right? I don't own all of them, of course, but I'm part of them. And I think it's also two things. It's all about information. So it's about clear, aligned information. And of course, information should be clear and aligned in two ways, whether you get them. So whatever information you get, you should be able to really sift out what is for you. And then when you give information, it also should be very, very clear. Um, of course, based on whatever purpose that you have. Because of the fact that a lot of people always give information in a very vague way. So going back to, let's say, business at this time, a lot of people would say, "Oh, let's get back into business, right? Oh, let's do well." But people don't really say, "What is this? How do you do actually well? How do you monitor what well is?" At the same time, when they get information, they are also biased by saying, "No, we're doing well in this," but they don't really do a study on the industry. They don't do a study on how are other people actually doing this. There's an actual misconception that I always hear, maybe from clients, is that they always want to do better than the other. Yeah, sure, fine, that's okay. But it's also good if your industry is also thriving because of the fact that having competition is always good. At the same time, it will actually up your game, right? And a lot of people would say that, hey, for example, we're the only restaurant open here in this area, let's say, right? That's actually bad for your business, because if all the restaurants in your area are open, more people will actually be able to get. It's going to be more thriving and all that. So it actually leads to that, right? I won't go into the long discussion of that. And which leads to giving information is, I'm sure you know about finite and infinite goals, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time
That's
we
evident.
bank on finite goals, which are like, oh, we have to reach 20% of our market share, something like that. And that's fine. But the thing here, I think, in times like this and in times of change, not just crisis, but any time, is also to be able to give them a proper infinite goal for a direction that they can go to if there is no finite goal, or sometimes finite goals cannot be achieved. Right?
All right.
So, like, for example, there's no certainty right now if we're able to reach our finite goals, but at least having an infinite goal would be very, very good. So, for example, our research team, to be very honest, people, because maybe of funds, because of things changing so much, we get research projects and suddenly the next day it gets cut. There are sometimes research projects that come in and then suddenly we don't know what else to do because there's no information coming in, right? But because our company, our infinite goal is to pretty much make information simpler in different mediums, to be able to, for people to take advantage of it and use it to make decisions. What happens there is that we actually do other things other than research or research related to be able to give information to people so that they could use it to, I don't know, make better decisions, right? So that's something that you could look at also.
That's
Because you can't
very
micromanage
good.
all the time.
Well, that's very good from a motivational standpoint, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if, admittedly, having infinite goals, or you know, uh, goals that are transcending, is very motivational in terms of building the enthusiasm and engagement of people and just keeping them going. But from a realistic standpoint, from a practical standpoint, um, how do you balance that? I mean, I'm also trying to come up with an answer to that in my head.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
because you still have to bring food to the table, right? You still have
Yeah,
to
of
pay your
course.
employees. So that's good. I get what you're saying. It's the ethereal purpose uh, framework where people are driven more because of what they are. It's not just a
Yeah.
carrot on the stick, right? At the end of the
Yeah,
stick,
yeah.
it's really more than that. But balancing it to be more practical and realistic. Any thoughts?
Actually, it is a realistic standpoint also. For example, I will show. Can I share something on screen? Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure.
Is that
Go ahead.
possible? Yeah?
There's a
Sure,
share
okay.
screen there at the bottom.
Okay, cool. Wow, interesting. Okay, so I'll share something which is an example of creating finite and infinite. So I don't know if, okay, if Lexus can actually show this. So for example, why I said finite. Finite, as I mentioned a while ago, can be something like this, right? So let's say your finite goal is to get 20% of market share, right? In each provincial department store. Let's say you're in retail, and also sales quota of X number of pesos, right? That's a finite goal to be able to put food on your table. But of course, if this cannot be achieved, or people don't really know, and you can't micromanage everyone to be able to reach this level, if especially for your managers and all these people. So an infinite can be saying that to provide every Filipino baby with what they need and deserve by making accessible products that deliver safety, performance, and function, that would mean that you're actually letting people just think about these things. So, for example, if this is my company, I would be doing things that would benefit or lead to safety, performance, and function only, or making things accessible, right? Other than that, if it's about design, if it's about other things, then I won't be doing it. I won't be caring about it. So what they need and deserve. So if ever it's a product, I'm going to be only selling things that are essentials. right? I'm not going to be selling things towards design. So this actually leads to getting your finite goals clear, or how to do your finite goals better. So that's something that people can look at, because a lot of times when you just give a finite goal, there is no direction that they can take, and suddenly you might be losing resources. For example, if this is my company, then if I put money in design right now and in a lot of like fancy like characters, then I would be actually wasting my resources because it's not aligned to my infinite goal. So it also keeps you as, for example, you said carrot on a stick. It's actually blinders for you, so that you're very, very focused on what you need to do and how you're able to get to your finite goals. Hopefully it makes sense, right? So, yeah. So that's something that I briefly tried to explain.
No, it's good. It's good. I think we get the gist of that. I've been having conversations with other managers Friday last week, and one of the things that we were discussing, and I want to share this to those who are watching and listening right now, just to be able to get ourselves back on track. This week is essentially uh, getting the building blocks in place. So one of the building blocks that we said should be in place is that the tool should be there. So one of the things that we try to manage is what's available in terms of communications. We made a conscious decision that we're not going to use Zoom. We're going to use Google Meet because that's what's accessible to everybody. We decided that we took into stock what can be delivered to each and everyone's homes for those who are working at home, whether it's a laptop or a desktop, and how far it is. So it's really just getting the structure in place. And then the second building block is the ways to work. So it's more the processes. How do we bill a client now? How do we send an invoice? How do we communicate? How do we keep track to with one another? With how do we conduct our meetings? How often? And those things. And on top of that, I think one of the things that I put on as a role for myself is visibility. How often should, in connection to the number of meetings or the virtual meetups, but it's more like it's really my visibility as a leader. How often will I get in touch with people? And meetings are different from one-on-ones and coaching and mentoring. So it's also trying to manage that in such a way that it doesn't really occupy so much of your time. Because at the end of it all, I think one of the building blocks that we want to establish, other than security and stability and safety, is the sense of belongingness, and that's where security comes in. Is that when they feel that this team is still getting stronger and we're still moving forward with our infinite and finite goals together, and being synchronized in all our efforts. So I just want to share that because I thought it's a basic like enumeration of the things that guided us for the week, and I think it would be helpful for anybody else who may want to be putting it together.
Okay, sure.
How about you guys? How did you get started with your business?
No, as usual, it's different for each. It's looking at what technologies are available, of course, and understanding, okay, like you said, what is accessible to people, right? And really understanding, okay, it's not about following what the best practices are, but what have we been doing? For example, you said invoices, right? How does invoices go? And usually here, you use invoices that are signed and all of that. So we said, what is that way of sending an invoice where you actually sign? Is there a program like that? So anything that is done physical, we tried to translate it into the digital world. At the same time, if people say that, oh, okay, you should do mass sending of emails, I would say that no, but our values are very, very, let's say, very personal. So I would still talk, even in online, I would still talk in my view, saying that, hey, you can email me, not, oh, please email Dae. No, it's not that. It's you can email me, and I talk to them as I talk to them in person. So it's similar as yours. And it's really asking, I guess, everyone or giving people options, because right now, I think trust actually leads to performance, and trust is more important right now. So a lot of people say that, oh, how about if there are sensitive things that have to be talked about? I guess at this point in time, this situation is already sensitive. So being as honest as possible and creating that trust or a trusting team would be the best. Meaning it's not about shaming, it's about understanding, okay, maybe you don't have this. Oh, maybe you don't have data. Maybe you don't have all these things, right? So that's something that you could look into. So here are the steps that we took. We pretty much lowered the barriers and said, okay, even if you're not the boss or who you're not higher or lower, we all put ourselves in the same level field, meaning we're all human beings, and said, okay, we're not always right. So what do you think is the things that we could do, right? Next is we had to be very honest in saying that, okay, thankfully we didn't need to do salary cuts, but there were some points in, for example, some of our staff members couldn't go to work because of no transportation, or because, let's say, their work is highly dependent on physical things, because we're retail, right? We have a retail thing. So that's also, we've been very honest, and we gave specific information about it, right? And of course, every time we would communicate so that to avoid, because what humans do is that if information is not given to them, it's either they'll make up or latch onto some information that they would believe in. And it is, I think, the company's job to be able to give that information that they would actually latch onto. So that's also another thing that would be very, very good, right? And then giving feedback. I think, I'm not sure where this study was, but you don't need to be physically there to be able to, for the employees to feel your presence, right? Actually giving feedback and communicating in different ways, right? And giving clear information would be very, very good. And I think this is what we said this time, was because feedback is very, very important at this time, because we can't lie anymore, right? And we have to be very blunt. And we always said that, feedback, there are three ways to do this. It's either you accept it and dismiss it as inaccurate, right? Or accept this as accurate and not do anything, or accept it and do something about it, right? And there is a bad notion of feedback wherein people think that it's always negative, right? So we told people that, hey, feedback is like a gift. Even if you like it or not, just say thank you and accept it. And it's up to you. And it is a gift because it's up to you to actually do something about it, right?
To
and say
improve.
thank you for it. And slowly, because of that, open communication, I think we're able to close the gaps between people and pretty much things like that. And I think we do have a question here. What would be the best budget allocation for private schools as a business? Like, where should private upgrade in their business? You want to answer this first, or do you want me to answer this?
You go first.
Okay. Being in the education field, I'll tell you first. Again, go back. What does your school stand for, right? Because it's very different for different schools. Maybe if you are for homeschooling, then getting in the parents as the people who would be educating side by side with you would be something. If you're a private school, that is for let's say different kind, because there is a school where there's progressive, there is a school where there's grade-based, like traditional, right? So it really depends on, okay, what are your values? Like some schools are creating, I don't know, Christian gentlemen. I saw it somewhere, right? There are some schools that are all for what's a centralized learning, or there are some schools that are personalized learning. So get that first, and then what is the budget allocation? So for example, I would think from the top of my head, if you're homeschooling, homeschooling school that provides information to people, then maybe putting your money in the resources that you give out, whether it's PDF or step-by-step guide for the parents, right? one-on-one consultations with the parents. So meaning spending on products like that, right? That can be something. But if you're a school that's giving out let's say, a mass education, like 50 people in the classroom, that's a different also where you put in the money. So yeah, Boris.
All right, Nigel
Uh-huh.
over here, this Mr. Captain America over here, it's all the way
Yeah.
from Cebu, and
Oh,
they
cool.
run a private school. I agree with Day. I guess before you jump into your budget, it's really more like doing a research first on what's really needed. First, you may want to check with your students. Do they even have access
Mhm.
to, let's say, what's their connectivity like? I mean,
Mhm.
if their connectivity is bad to begin with, no amount of investment that you will put in digitalizing
Yeah.
everything would really work. So I suggest, and it's also a good way to save. I mean, if you know that, let's say, not all your students can go digital, then
Mm.
don't pivot everything digitally. I mean, find other ways, and maybe delivering the materials to them. Maybe it's calling them. I don't know. Maybe it's more like um, maybe it's not entirely let's say investing on a new platform or getting a fancy digital version. Some of my clients are are some textbook publishers, and they are offering some alternatives, and they're quite
Oh.
expensive. And I know you're a private school, and normally you're the target for these publishers, but you don't necessarily have to jump the bandwagon simply because everybody's is doing that. Cater to the specific needs of your students. And I don't know what socioeconomic levels you have in your target, and then you may want to adjust according to that. It might be a combination of both. So you might be still doing a
Yeah.
little bit of the textbooks or the printed stuff delivered. You might be doing multiple platforms to begin with. You may want to take advantage of free platforms. I know my eldest is studying in Ateneo, and they've not really they've been maximizing Google as much as they can because
Mm.
that's what the students really have access to. So I wouldn't really have an answer to the budget, but
Mm.
I think you can save more if I'm going to be honest about it. In a lot of the things that are happening in the crisis, it's actually bringing us a lot of basics. And then if we do that, I guess you'll also discover that our costs will also be lower. It might affect the way you charge your parents because they might complain if you charge the same amount, considering that it's not the usual school setup and classroom setup that they're experiencing. So you might have to do some P&L there. So your budget
Yeah.
will actually depend on what's exactly needed, and don't go beyond what's really needed, as opposed
Yeah.
to what other people are dictating or what your competitors are doing. Don't jump the bandwagon just because others are doing it. Define your own, define your needs, and you'll be able to define your budget.
I guess this goes for everyone. Coming off from where what Boris is saying is that what's this? When you do your research, there are two ways to do it. Obviously, you can hire a research company, but based on our experience, this is what happens. People sometimes are biased when they do research. So this is something that might sound funny, but you might also be blinded by it. For example, you do a survey on who actually has internet connection, but you do an online survey. So obviously, the
Yeah.
people who are going to answer it have access to the internet. So you would say that, oh, you have 100% access to internet, and you would say, okay, you're going to release it. But when you think about it, that's actually flawed, right? So those small nuances, try to really look on those nitty-gritty things. And sometimes it's not just because Boris and I are consultants, but sometimes it's also maybe cheaper to actually hire someone to take a look at it from an outside view. Okay. Of course, yeah, disclaimer, yes, we are consultants, but it's also a good way to do that so that there's no bias in it, right? So I'm just being very honest, right? So that's also a good way to look at that. There's another question here that says, hi, it's for you, Boris. aside from going back to our work as employees, would it also be a good time to start our own business? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Let me jump into that. This lockdown is really a good opportunity to just reflect and probably reinvent yourself,
Hmm.
and probably in the process, if a lot of us, if a lot of, and that includes me, honestly, that includes me. After this meeting, I have to talk today. Maybe he could hire me as a consultant. we, we need to find other sources of income, right? Because
Yeah.
we're all making sacrifices. Some of you have lost your jobs. Some of you may have experienced tawag ito, a cut. For some of our employees, our negotiations that we're not cutting your salary, but you have to invest on a higher internet connectivity if you are to work at home. So I think that was the deal that we were making. And but for some people who are losing portions of their income, this is really a good time to think about having other source of income. And being online is really a
Hmm.
vast, it's an ocean of opportunities, I guess. It won't drop, it won't come in big bucks for you, but it's really a good opportunity to start something small and see it grow. Like Ian, if you are, this guy's name is Ian, I guess. Ian, if you are working and there's stability in your work, but then you have time to actually do something else, then do that. But don't do it at the expense of your employer's
Yeah.
working time, okay?
Yeah.
Because if they're still paying you in full, then I think you should give them what's due them. So if it's 8 hour worth of work per day, work for them before you do your sideline or anything. But yes, this is a good opportunity to do that. I've been thinking about doing that. I've been telling my employees to think of doing that. We've been looking at the market, we've been looking at other opportunities because it's actually just good to have diverse sources of income, especially at this point.
Yeah, I'd like to add on that just to because other people's are asking ideas on how I can jumpstart business in agriculture and other things, right? In any business. One thing that I always say is don't follow your passion, right? Don't follow your passion because of the fact that only passion won't get you there. A business should be run like a business, meaning it passion is not enough. Meaning learn the skills on how you actually can manage a business. Learn the skills on how you can actually from marketing to management to all these random things that are needed. So maybe if it's agriculture, then okay, what are your supply chain and all these random things that connect to it? Because most of the time, of course, there are many reasons that businesses fail. But if I look at the businesses that I've seen and failed, are because of the fact that they do not, how do you say this, do their research that well of
Uh-huh.
their industry. At the same time, they do not. They always try to go with the fad. For example, right now with the quarantine happening, a lot of people started doing food delivery businesses from their own homes. Always ask yourself also, is it actually doing well because of the situation right now? What if the situation
Yeah.
actually leaves, right? So that's also another thing. Is and what you can ask yourself always when starting a business is not okay. Will I enjoy doing this? Because at any work, at any time, at some point in time, you would really not like it, right? Same with me.
Okay.
I love teaching, but I won't like it at certain points and times. But what question you have to ask yourself is that what value am I actually giving to others? At the same time, ask yourself, okay, what is that value you're giving to others? But what am I annoyed about that I want to change around me? Right?
Yeah.
So it starts with an annoyance of yourself. So maybe there you can be passionate about things, right? So that's something that you could look into. Um, Books are always a good starting point. If you don't, then YouTube. There's so many ways. Look at the different sides of how to, put up and manage a business. That's something that you can look at too.
I have a version of what you said.
Yeah, sure.
Normally I guide people by telling them how how do you define your perfect world, or what
Yeah,
problem would you like to solve. So
yeah.
it's either of those two options, and if that's something that wakes you up in your sleep, and it's something that you're gritty about, then maybe it's something that you need to pursue and start working on.
Yeah.
Somebody's asking us. Her name is Bridge Swason. What kind of venture are you guys doing?
What do you
You
mean?
go
What kind of
first.
ventures? What do you mean ventures?
Maybe business. I think she meant business.
Oh, me? Well, obviously, I'm in the information business, intelligence business. So I gather information and use it to people's advantage. That's basically. And because we want to practice what we teach and say, we actually use our frameworks and all these things that we get for our own stuff. So some of the industries that we are in are maybe clothing, uh, baby business, consulting. Yeah, so yeah, different businesses that we actually have, but it all boils down to information. Information. Yeah.
Yeah. Maraming racket
Yes,
si
yes.
Jay, mga kababayan. Marami
No.
siyang diverse source of no, just kidding. Yes, let me just check the name. Yes, Bridge. I'm in the business of learning and development. My role. I'm a corporate educator. So what we do is we have a acronym for that. We do aim, assess, intervene, and measure. So we diagnose whatever is the learning needs of the organization or group or individual, and then we intervene. Interventions come in different forms. So it could be a classroom training, which is now not happening in the near future. So we're probably pivoting that to virtual training. We do a lot of coaching, whether it's executive performance, sometimes
Mm.
psychological. So it's almost bordering into counseling. And we do a lot of consultancies at work as well. So
Mm.
yeah, those are the businesses that I'm in personally.
Oh, did I have to be super specific?
Uh, because I know you can, yeah, because you have many secrets.
No, no, no. I mean, the bulk of work I do is we do a lot of research. We do a lot of research and give that information so that it can be used by other people. So that's our arm. We also educate people. If I guess if Boris is on the side of coaching and mentoring, ours is on the scientific side. So we have mental health programs for companies because we have the licensed which is therapists to do it. So of course, having both Boris's side, meaning of consulting, and that side, and the scientific side is always good because see, I think also safety comes from having this internal and external factors. What does that mean? External meaning a lot of psychological safety or feedback comes from the external. And we said that not a lot of people get to reflect on themselves. So
Yeah.
mentoring, coaching, and even psychological therapy doesn't mean that you have mental issues, right? Even if you don't have mental issues, these three things that I mentioned is actually trying to reflect. It's like a guided thing wherein you can reflect on yourself so that there is something internal and not everything's coming from external. I mean, this is
Mm,
where issues happen because people, when bombarded with external feedback, especially with social media and all these things, you tend to compare and you tend to not see your strengths and weaknesses. So it's
mm,
always good to have these coach mentors and therapists to actually help you go through the internal struggles that you have. Some people are very good with it, and even if you're good at it, it's always good to have someone really going through. Mentors and coaches and all these people don't really tell you what to do, honestly
mm.
speaking. They just really untangle all the knots that you have in your head. So that's something that you guys can also look at, right? I think Boris does that a lot, right? You do that a lot.
Yeah. Wait, we have another question from the same guy from Cebu. He said we talked about feedback. With the new normal of having online meetings and chat groups, what would be a good
Uh,
guideline when giving feedback
oh,
online?
okay.
People are not
Cool.
used to having feedback face to they're not used to having feedback face to face. How much more online? It's a good point. You want to go
Yeah.
first?
Yeah, I'll go first. It's actually better right now that it is online because you can actually make it anonymous. So, for example, something that we use is that we put an Excel sheet that's shared or a Google sheet that is shared, or you can email it. I don't know, whatever. But it's shared, and it just has the names of the people, and you can anonymously just log in there and then just write down what are the strengths and weaknesses of the people, right? And not just that, feedback I think starts from being honest in communication. So a good thing would be like, in a setting or wherein you check in with people, a good thing to ask always is first, okay, what actually excited you the past week and what frustrated you for the past week is a stepping point to actually getting feedback, because the more honest and open they are about talking about what is real, because this is what's going to start when you say, okay, what excited you? Oh, I had a good meal. But more and more you do it, the more deeper that it will get. Oh, I was excited about this new work that I tried because I got frustrated because, oh, I was talking to Boris, but his internet connection was really bad. See? So slowly you actually get honest with it. And when it comes to feedback, always tell people that it's not always negative, right? So there's this very good acronym. I said a while ago that feedback is a gift, but you could actually use the GIFT acronym. First is G is, of course, give it with permission. So feedback, you always ask them, hey, can I give you feedback, right? It can be good or negative, or it can be positive or negative, right? Second is I. The intent should always be for growth, whether it's positive or negative. So you're talking about behaviors. For example, if Boris always smiles and that actually makes people feel good, I can say, hey, Boris, I really like when you smile, right? That's so random, but that's how it is, right? Then, because the intent is for growth, not, Boris, I'm so annoyed at you because whatever. No, it's not, right? It's always about the behaviors. Next, it's for the person. So F, it's for the person and not about the person, right? So it's for the person, not about the person. And lastly, always target it for success. So you really genuinely want, I know it's hard for some time, most of the time, wherein if our culture is always trained us to, we have to be number one, we have to succeed, but try to be happy with the success of others too. Because you're in the same company anyway, right? So the more they're able to succeed, the more you'll be able to succeed too. So target it for success. So those are the things that are, of course, it's a long process to go through, but there are processes like that. Actually, being online is better than being face to face when practicing giving feedback, right? So that's one thing that you could look at.
Well, I like what you're saying. I wonder if Nigel meant actually, let's say he will give feedback to their people. Like for example, if I'm talking to you right now, and then so that's good. What you gave is really good. I like the GIFT acrostic. It really gives it a lot of basis on why they're giving their feedback. So just to strengthen what Dae is saying, Nigel, I guess it's really important. I think when you're online, what's really advantageous right now is that you could actually have a contracting point, or you don't have to make it too formal, but at the beginning, give out that idea that, okay, these are the parameters of our conversation, of our leadership remotely, and this is what's going to happen. Just to be able to set the parameters. With most of my clients, those who are leading remotely, even before the crisis, they do have this coaching agreement at the beginning, and everybody signs off to that. And one of a major paragraph or clause there is giving feedback, when to give feedback and what feedback is for. And that essentially captured what Dae is saying. I guess in a very informal way, when you ask for permission and when you tell people that you're going to give feedback or generate feedback, it's clear to them what feedback is for and what's the purpose of feedback. And that somehow removes the uncertainty or the misinterpretation of things, which can lead to miscommunications. And even if you had that, there will be some room for miscommunication. Like if I'm chatting with Dae and in an email I did say something and it was clear that it was a feedback. One way to double check if it wasn't misinterpreted or it wasn't causing ill feelings in between, then you have to check with the person later on, online or through a virtual meeting. or maybe over the phone, just check up on them. Hey, I know it's been 2 days after I gave my feedback to you, but I just want to check on that. And then if the person says it's okay, we're moving on, then you're moving on. But if there are still some rooted emotions or reactions, then maybe it's good to discuss that further. Otherwise, I think you're good. I guess the idea is accountability. If you fostered, sign off, contracted accountability between you and your people, feedback should be easier to give. And then give it regularly. Don't just give it because it's needed or there's you're firefighting. Because if it's given regularly, it becomes a culture. If it's a culture, everybody's used to that. Everybody would be used to you giving feedback. And that's a good opportunity during this time that we're all virtual to contract or to ask permission among our people that we're going to do this henceforth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're down to our last 5 minutes. We're gonna bring back Lexus in. Maybe you have some questions, Lexus. Meron ka bang tanong? Baka as a businessman yourself.
Well, actually, I've been learning a lot from the conversation, and yun nga, yung last one, which is yung giving feedback and the purpose of the feedback. Siguro ano lang, ano yung best, quick tips lang for people who are unsure of, meron pa ba kami babalikan? Something like that. Hindi namin, kasi uncertainty, di ba? Hindi namin alam kung pagpasok namin sa work or pagpunta namin sa business, may customers pa ba na napapasok or meron pa bang magtatangkilik dun sa mga products or services namin. So, ano yung siguro quick tips lang that you can give to those business people or employees na pwede nilang gawin para mabilis silang maka-adjust or maka-adapt doon sa situation?
You know what? That you can never get more real than Lexus' question right now, and that's true. And I know he's feeling it. I'm feeling it also. Like I do not. I mean, the levels of our potential income as the year started is not the same to how this year is unfolding. And personally, I have a lot of commitments. I have this and this. I have mortgages to pay. I have loans to pay, and I didn't really expect a lot of this. And for a lot of people, especially for those who never really saved for this rainy day, for this crisis, I know it's hitting you real hard, and I'm not going to dismiss that or minimize that. It's really an agonizing feeling. And the only advice that I could give for those people who are having difficulty in that area, in that arena financially, and when they think that everything is kind of bleak, is when things are getting tough, you tighten your belt. You make adjustments. So this is also the season of sacrifices. What sacrifices do you need to make in order to make both ends meet? What do you need to give up? What do you need to let go? Again, when I say when I use the phrase "we're going back to basics," I actually meant literally from everything: the way we spend, the way we live, our lifestyles. And even if you have some money saved up, it's not licensed for you to actually use them up, right? Because things can just get worse in the process. So adjusting, tightening your belt, finding ways to. I mean, I think the basic financial principle is find ways to increase your income, find ways to lower your expenses. So and for a lot of cases, you're just finding ways to sustain existing income or to recuperate lost income. But the other thing, which is a major strategy that goes alongside that, is you lower your expenses as much as you can. Lower your expenses, because that's the best way to actually adjust in this tumultuous, uncertain times. And if you've been listening to us for the last 45 minutes, Lex, I mean, a lot of the things that we're saying is essentially going to put you back on track. If you know what your purpose is, again, if you know what really matters to you, I guess at the end of the day, we're back to what's essential and what's important. You can start prioritizing. You can start sifting through what you have, and then deciding, okay, I'm just going to focus on these few things, and these few things really matter to me at this point. And then decide on being proactive in pursuing that. And initially, it may not have huge returns, but hopefully, it's something that is stable and it's consistent, and it's something that you love working for, even over time. And then it eventually will bring in more cash and more income for you. But you need to stay focused on what really matters to you, on what your purposes are, and be vigilant about that. Be proactive. Persevere on things that work. Pivot on things that doesn't, because you can actually revise them and start all over again. God knows I've been doing that for the past 2 months. I've been trying to see what worked, what doesn't work. I've been using this platform that we're doing right now to just see what kind of insights would be useful for other people as well. Because um, when you don't have time to put things together or to research things, you want to learn from the moment that you're doing things like something like this. I'm learning as I'm answering the questions. I'm trying to see what your needs are, and I'm trying to understand them, because all of those becomes gem to the business that I'm running, and it helps me moving forward. I'm gonna stop there because they may have something else to say.
No, no, not really. Pretty much you said everything. So, yeah, it might be a very simple question, but I'm just going to reiterate it again and say, yeah, any change requires always asking yourself, what is important, right? What is important? And whether you're, let's start with business owners. Like, for example, if you're a business owner, what is the core of your business? Like, what are you doing? A lot of people in times of change or uncertainty, what they do is that they try to innovate by making something that is outside of their core. But what's important here is that, okay, what is that one maybe specific product or service that you offer, and then innovate around it, not outside it, right? So that's also something. If you are a worker, an employee, it's just that it just got more real when it comes to you don't know if you're going to have work today or tomorrow. And that's regardless or of even business owners, anyone. You don't know what tomorrow brings, right? So the best thing that you can do, especially with times like this, where we're not really on the same boat, right, is to really invest in yourself with skills. Because maybe you might find something that would actually interest you more, or at the same time, there would be, I am certain about this, that there would be a sudden increase of job offers around, right? When suddenly business started going back to business, then with the skills that you have, you'll be able to maybe choose what you want to do, or even with the skills that you have, even improve more. But of course, they always say that, okay, yes, work on your weaknesses, but I think at this time, it's always good to work on your strengths, because that's actually a better use of your time than trying to fix whatever you're weak at, right? So that's something for this kind of time or times. Yeah. So yeah. So, and whatever Boris said, because he pretty much said everything. So yeah, I mean that's it. That's why it's always good to have other people, throw ideas back and forth. Always reflect. Write a journal if you can. Yeah, and maybe someday or one day you'll be able to get there.
All right, thank you, Sir Dae and Sir Boris, for that wonderful conversation and for the tips and the ideas that you gave our audience. And if those people that are watching right now have questions or meron kayong mga gustong topic na gusto pag-usapan for the next episode ng ating Mentor on Mentor, you can comment, you can send us a message as well. And see you again next week. Thank you for tuning in. Any last words, Sir Boris and Sir Dae?
Day, would you like to go first?
As always. I guess really just look at what you have right now and then work around it. Comparing doesn't really work. I'll just give you a very quick example. For example, in our retail business, we are in, let's say, the baby retail business. Our really mission was to provide or have accessible, safe stuff for people, to make it very short, right? One of the things that we actually did to keep connection with our customers was, okay, we're all about safety and the needs of people. So what we did was, what can we do that we can do remotely, even for retail, by giving value? And we said, okay, maybe we can actually hire a OB to be able to ask or answer some of the things that they can't because they're scared to go to the hospital. And that actually led to us actually keeping our customers. And now that we're opening, we're able to give them the products that they need more. So yeah, it's about investment in the skills and the features and the objectives that you had from the start. So that's something that you could think. Okay, Boris?
All right. Hey, Dae, do you
Yeah.
do project management?
What do you mean? Well, not me, but my team does.
Let's talk later. I just saw somebody make a comment, and I just remembered a requirement that I need to provide her. No, I'm just kidding. I just want to say hi to Chrissy. Chrissy is listening right now. Thank you for listening and watching, Chrissy. Zaira,
Thank you.
Angelica, Nix, thank you for joining in, and I really appreciate you tuning in, guys, and asking those questions. I like what Rick Warren said that I heard from Anthony Pangilinan when we were having this same session side by side.
Yeah.
I think he was saying something about we're not on the same boat,
No,
and it's true. We're all in the same storm. We all have different boats, but we can all learn from one another. And if we understand how the storm will last and how it's going to affect us, then we should really be more proactive in dealing with that. Um, Admittedly, it's not as good for a lot of people, and I've been seeing that in the past few days, individually and corporately. I have lots of friends who's running resort and hotel businesses, and they've been affected really badly by this crisis. And we don't really have fixed solutions for them.
We don't. There's
But
none.
I think what's really going to keep them from going is knowing really what's at the core of their being and what they're made of and what they're called to do. And once they know that, they realize that, then they can always go back to their feet. Of course, there's losses. Of course, there are damages, and of course, there will be sacrifices along the way. But regardless of those things, and I know it may not be encouraging at this point, but you will stand back. You will be able to stand up again and thrive, just because you know who you are, you know who you belong to, and you know what you're here for. And have a long lasting impact with your life and your business. So I wish you all the best, and I hope that this short conversation, as usual, Day is very insightful. Day is very insightful, and I hope you've learned a lot. And please share this to all your other friends, colleagues, and business people that you know.
All right.
Okay, guys, thank you for watching. I don't know what happened to Lexus. He's going to come back soon.
All
There he
right.
is.
Thank you for watching, guys, and see you again next time on our episode of Mentor on Mentor. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.